All right, let's go to the Sunday games. Bucks Celtics. What a win for the Milwaukee Bucks. 12-point victory. A dominant Giannis performance without shooting well. Had a triple double, but flew around defensively. Kind of dominated the painted area on both ends. Drew Holiday with 25, 9, and 5. Jason Tatum had 21, but did so on 18 shots. Jaylen Brown with 12 points on 13 shots was not a great outing for him as well. Steve, what stood out to you in this game one?
Well, there's a lot to take away from it. And I think we have maybe some, I don't want to say differing views, but different takeaways, which is the fun of basketball. And this is a fun series when you adjust from what both these teams did in round one to this round. I do want to start with, despite the box score, I thought Giannis was incredible in that game
Mm-hmm.
on both ends of the floor. I thought he gave them a little bit of everything. And this version of Giannis is incredibly tough to deal with. Man can drive, man can post, man can ISO. The improved passing versus your double teams, your walls in transition, that's difficult. And I know every time I talk about Giannis's jumper, everyone wants to throw percentages out there. I get it. But it's tough when he's willing to take that pull up, like deciding to take that pull up. It's a mindset type deal. Like when you're defending a great player, there's usually one thing, okay, I can try and live with this. If he's choosing the one thing, like not just, hey, I'm going to take this because you're off me. Like, no, two dribbles, 1-2 right up. Bang you in the post, fade away, one legged. Like he's choosing to mix those in. He only has to hit so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because also, what's the turbo button these days? R2?
Yes.
There. R2X circle.
Whatever the one.
So yeah, it just felt like that was a game where Boston was trying to find one thing to live with, find a poison they could take, and he just kept delivering them different flavors. So I wanted to give him a salute, but where do we even want to start with this one? Do you want to start Milwaukee's defense? Do you want to talk Boston's offense? How do we balance that out? Because I think there's takeaways on both ends here.
Yeah, this was the fun game for me. Let's start with. I just want to give some love to Milwaukee's defense.
Yes, preach the gospel,
I was,
Nagotis.
will you please? I was a little surprised with some of the matchups. Namely, Giannis got Jaylen Brown to start. I was expecting, I was expecting him to get the Horford matchup. Like, all right, that puts him in pick and rolls, let him switch some of the spacier pick and roll options for Boston, but also Horford's off ball, and we'll dig into that as well with Boston's offense. But if Horford's off ball, that gives Giannis the ability to roam and really lurk as a help defender, which is where he's at his best. But they put him on Jaylen Brown. They had him switching some stuff. They had him fighting over screens other times. That was a little bit messy. But overall, oh, go ahead.
I'm going to pause you here because I think that was an important piece of this. They didn't care who Giannis was guarding. He had one job and he was going to do it, and y'all have to deal with it. Y'all have to make us pay for that, which I think is very interesting considering Boston just had a series where they did the same thing with Al Horford. And they said, hey, you have to find a way to make that guy pay. If you can't make that guy pay, we're going to win. And Giannis did so many things defensively to where it was like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Just like he's not just helping off Grant Williams, he's helping off Jaylen Brown and selling out on the drive. But continue.
With you. I was just gonna say the way that Milwaukee dominated the painted area, not even just dominate the painted area, the way they dominated inside the arc. I think that's a more accurate way to put what Milwaukee did. Because it's easy to talk about what they do as a drop defense, what Brook Lopez does, which credit to him played a little bit higher up, but it was still a drop for him. But what he does as a drop defender, what Giannis does as a weak side defender, or when he's in drop. But Milwaukee, what made them tough against Boston's game one, they dropped and they also showed aggressive help. And so you didn't really have clean pockets anywhere inside the arc. Um, because naturally, if you go drop, you have some pull up three opportunities, or in theory, you'd have some pull up mid range jumpers. They didn't really have those because depending on where Boston had their guy spaced, like if you had a high pick and roll with Jason Tatum, you had Marcus Smart on either one of the wings, and you had Horford somewhere else. Those guys, whoever defending those guys, are they're just pinching in. So Tatum may come off the screen. If the pull up three isn't there, the pull up two isn't there either. Like he's just seeing bodies and hands everywhere. And that's before you get into the fact that okay, these guys are also dropping into the paint. You can't get to the rim either. So it was just the way that they constricted space was pretty impressive to me.
They nailed every rotation, every recovery, and sold out on every drive. And that was incredibly impressive because, as you mentioned, I want to give Brook a salute. He was consistently at the level without overcommitting.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime there was a drive, because Boston had the kicks and they were driving on those closeouts, but they were immediately met with a help defender. And Milwaukee was flying around. And if you're going to do that, you have to nail every rotation. Because if you're late, now you're giving up layups. And I think that's such a key part of this series for both sides. You know, when you talk about Boston, it's great that you can get two on the ball. Because that was my concern with this series. Oh, Milwaukee's going to be in a drop. Boston can't get the rhythm. They're going to bog down, et cetera, et cetera. They got two on the ball. But what they did with it is going to be huge. And what they do with it going forward is going to be big. They didn't get the easy baskets out of it because of the paint protection. So even though you're getting those same looks that you hit against Brooklyn, or good looks for what you want as a team, now you have to make those because they're not giving you anything else. Mm-hmm. And that puts pressure on Williams, Horford, Pritchard, those same in-rhythm shots they had, because they were also getting the mismatches. They were also getting easy transition baskets. They were also getting drives and finishes. Nope, this is the one. And so it becomes, how does Boston balance those shots, those quality looks they generated, with also still putting pressure on Milwaukee's defense and being able to finish and get in the paint? Mm-hmm. But continue. Sorry. I'm excited. I like this series.
No, I'm right there with you. And to that point, and we talked about this in the lead up to this series, like what Boston is going to see from a size perspective, it's going to be an adjustment period for them. And I think not that their offensive process was like horrible, and it wasn't bad in the Brooklyn series either, but like now where you're spacing your guys is even more important. Because in the Brooklyn series, you could get away with, okay, we got two bad shooters on one side or whatever. It didn't matter because the guy you're hunting, I mean, you're going against a lineup with 3-6-3 dudes. So sure, those guys may be able to help, but that help is also small. And you're not really worried about it. Against Milwaukee, yeah, if you're running a pick and roll, you got Derek White as the single side shooter. Yeah, that's probably going to matter a little bit more now. Because that guy's peeling over and you're already dealing with size in front of you. So now you have more to deal with. And I think there was enough small stuff for Boston from a space perspective that popped up where it's like, okay, this is low-hanging fruit for them. But this is also something I don't think they really had to account for in round one. So I'm going to be curious to see like what those adjustments are going to be like in game two. Like there was a brief stretch in the first half where they're waiting on a sub, but you did get Derek White and Marcus Smart on the floor at the same time for a short stretch, and it was immediately 5 guys in the paint. And I was like, oh, this is a team that has scouted well. This is a team that's saying, no, you're not beating us with anything easy. And if you have bad shooters on the floor, or if you are not spaced correctly, we are going to make you pay, and you're going to have to beat us with tough shots. And the open shots that we're feeding you are from guys that we want to take those shots. And so I'm curious to see how Boston's able to counter that as well.
And it's interesting. Boston ends up with kind of the same scenario they struggled with earlier in the season, with how teams were defending some of their lineups and shooters, despite the percentages against perception. You know, you need to be a threat. You have to knock down the shots that are there. You can't be, if you're Grant Williams, Al Horford, you can't get tight. You got to keep letting it fly. And back to your size point, Brooklyn may have helped off of Smart and White, but those guys could also not just make shots, they were driving closeouts. They could also get a paint touch. That's where Milwaukee's size helps because, hey, we can help and recover. And now what are you going to do? We're going to contain this drive. And if we don't, there's more help behind it and we're still going to get back out. So that's kind of the balance there. I thought Boston made a few good adjustments. I thought setting screens higher for Tatum was good, just as a way to get him downhill. I guess my issue is a little bit of how much he had to initiate in this game, just because he was the pressure point as far as opening things up. I think getting Brook on the move would be something they should try to explore. If he's going to be at the level consistently, try and screen for him before. Make him make multiple efforts. Now see if you can get downhill, what it creates. And then I'm interested to see the adjustments as well. Do they go more empty corner? Are they able to space and manipulate a little bit more that way to make Milwaukee think about the help they were showing? But you have the base of getting 2 on the ball. Now you just got to make them pay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad you brought up the screening before the screen point because they did do that once. One play that stood out for me, and I put it in the thread that I did on the game, where they had kind of some screen-to-screener action that led into a Smart Tatum pick and roll. Because like that pick and roll combo did not do much in game 1. And part of that was just because Milwaukee was locked in on it. Some of the matchups that they tossed out there, it was easier to switch, or the screen navigation was there. And on that point, Wes Matthews deserves his flowers for the work that he is doing fighting over screens. That man is very good. Still. But wait, what's the, oh no, what did I do?
No, you're good. Continue.
I see. I thought I said something wrong, but no, I just want to give Wes Matthews some props. Like he did get the Jason Tatum assignment and he made him work. And even with some of the screen stuff Boston tried to sprinkle in, like he was able to navigate those screens. He was able to bother Tatum throughout the night. And this wasn't a game where Jason Tatum had the contested jumpers going. That may change in game 2, but for game 1, at least he's a big reason. And again, if Wes Matthews can do that, that means you can deploy Jrue Holiday elsewhere. And that allows Giannis to roam elsewhere. And you're keyed in pretty much elsewhere. Like that's the entire point of having a guy like Wes Matthews in the lineup. Like he takes pressure off for everyone else, allows them to help more aggressively. So if he's able to hold serve, that is going to put quite a damper on what Boston wants to do offensively.
And I thought Bobby Portis held up his end of the bargain, which is important.
Good defensive game for him.
They needed that because again, if Boston can find a pressure point in that Milwaukee defense, this changes things to where now you're having to show help as opposed to desiring to show help, which is a slight difference. It's a Jaylen Brown series for Boston. They need his drives. They need his force. They need his scoring. They need his finishing. They need his attacks and transition. They need his paint touches. They need him to be able to be the guy to make Milwaukee pay. He can't be in the group of, we're helping off you. If nothing else, he has to be the person they can put on the weak side to make you think about not helping. Mm-hmm. And he has to be able to initiate and create some of the same pressure, same opportunities. So now his paint touches open up a kick to Tatum. Where now Tatum can attack a screen on defense. And now you can play that way. But it's tough for me to see this working if Jaylen Brown can't get it going.
And I think that's where the Giannis matchup is key. And again, they were able to generate some looks here or there with Giannis because again, as great as Giannis is defensively, screen navigation isn't his strong suit. So they did run some off-ball stuff for Jaylen Brown to get him free. There was some Tatum screening for Brown action early in the game that created a 3. You can't have Brown not knocking down shots and also not being able to get to the rim and also missing reads as a passer whenever he is able to drive into the paint. Like that, it was just an all-around bad performance. That's something that I expect him to bounce back from. But you really felt it on the night, on an afternoon like Sunday, when everyone else is already kind of stressed based on what Milwaukee's doing defensively. Actually, to your earlier point about Al Horford, he did get the 3s up, took 9 of them. but also that feels like a win if you're Milwaukee.
It feels like a win until he starts making them. And that's the tricky part with Al. The last thing he can do is pass him up. He's got to keep shooting them. So if he starts getting hesitant, that's the big win for Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. If you've left him enough to where now he's passing these up, trying to look for another handoff, now you really won. Speaking of Al Horford, is this spooky time for Demon time?
I need to see another game because I do think overall he was pretty solid defensively, but there were some possessions where he was just on an island against Giannis. I'm just like, yo, don't do that against Al Horford. Like, I understand trying to do that if you switch him out on the KD, just because KD isn't like the paint presence. And you can kind of be like, okay, this isn't great. I mean, we don't love this, but you can force him into the jumper. You can't give him single coverage with Giannis consistently because Giannis is going to get downhill.
That's the tough part. It felt like the Nets couldn't make Al Horford a pressure point, and Giannis feels like he is the pressure point. And it's a different kind of drive. It's a different kind of pressure. And the other thing I kind of wanted to bleed into is, how about the Bucks cutting? How about the cutting in that game? I thought they made a really good adjustment from how they looked in the Chicago series early to what they did in this game one. It's not as easy for Boston to load up in this series. Despite the personnel, guys are cutting. Depending on where Giannis is, they're diving. They got to make sure they don't double cut at the same time, but there's different cuts. There's different spacing. They got shooters spaced one pass away. They've got guards at the dunker spot sometimes. They got Brook Lopez starting high and then diving. So they're doing little things to kind of chip away at Boston's automatic help and doubles. And again, Giannis's passing has been really good. So that's one of those little things I'm watching in the half court where it's like, it's not as easy, you know? Mm-hmm. You want to give Horford the switch and you want to show early help, but I don't know if my man's cutting. I don't know where I'm going to be the next possession. It's not as stagnant as before. And that paint pressure is different, man. We just got to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a blend. Like, Jrue Holiday presents a different challenge and how many just response shots has he hit this year? Where it just seems like things are going one way and here he comes, one dribble pull up. You don't even see it. Like they're showing whoever's they're panning to whoever scored, and then all of a sudden you just see Jrue Holiday shooting a three, and it's like, oh, okay, all right. And then he might just turn the corner and just shoulder you in the chest. It's different.
Just a tad bit different. And I'm glad you brought up I was proud of Milwaukee with the way that they spaced around Giannis. I was like, wow, this is Grayson Allen one pass away multiple times in a row. And Grayson Allen getting wide open shots. This is cool. This is good stuff. Keep doing that. And that's, I guess that's the scary thing with Milwaukee. If they're able to figure this stuff out, again, like we have to note, like they won game one, no Chris Middleton. Don't know when Middleton's coming back. If they space the floor well enough, like, is Bobby Portis as good as Chris Middleton? No. Is Pat Connaughton or Grayson Allen as good as them? No. Are they respected shooters that you have to account for? Yes. And so if you space those guys around Giannis, who is a walking paint touch, who will get to the rim and score, get to the rim, get to the free throw line, or get to the rim and draw 2 or 3 bodies, and at least open shots, as long as you are spacing the floor correctly, you can generate the same level of looks pretty consistently, even with Middleton off the floor. And so it's going to be up to Milwaukee to keep their good process up, make sure they're spacing correctly, make sure they're not feeding Boston the easy automatic so they can take away some of the cuts that you have. If you put that kind of stress on them, it's just going to come down to, like, okay, how good are your guys? How tall are your guys? How physical are your guys? And as Giannis shown, Al Horford's been really good defensively this year. He is a good defender. You can't leave him on an island consistently against Giannis. Giannis went hunting for the Robert Williams matchup in this game. As good of a defender as Rob Williams is, he's not dealing with those body blows from Giannis consistently. And goodness, how much Daniel Theis did we even see? Did we see Daniel Theis? So I mean, it's just a different ordeal. Like the paint pressure is so different for Milwaukee. Like if they keep the process up, they can dictate things in a way that Brooklyn just couldn't.
No, I'm with you. But 84 field goal attempts, 53-point shots.
Yeah.
And I guess the positive for me for Boston, 28 made field goals, 21 assists. So you still have your flow going. You know you can create opportunities for each other. I want to see what it looks like if they're able to get some more paint touches, some more finishes, make a couple more shots, because the exploit is there. And Milwaukee is going to have to be locked in like that the entire time. Now, the tricky part for Boston is it wasn't even as solid as I thought Milwaukee was, as much as I liked what some of the things they did offensively. It wasn't their best shooting or scoring game.
Mm-hmm.
So, the tough part is, does Boston make the adjustments, but also Milwaukee plays better offensively, so it doesn't matter as much. That's the hard part about a playoff series.
Yeah.
Where we figured this out, and now you've given us a whole different problem.
Yeah. Giannis went 9 of 25 in that game because he did see a lot of bodies and a lot of attention. He also just missed some bunnies. Like this very well could have been a 35, 12, and 13 game or whatever for Giannis had he made some layups. And so, like, there's the fact that there's low hanging fruit for Giannis, and he still dominated that game. Yeah,
They just got to pick one poison with Giannis, and I think they got to figure out however they want to treat Drew. They got to try and make him ineffective. They can't have both of them going. Not in this series.
yeah, they can't afford to. How'd you feel about the Marcus Smart game on ball?
On offense,
Yeah,
I think it's just going to be a tough series for him with the way they're defending. It's not going to be as easy for him to initiate. There's not many actions for him. I thought he tried to do a good job driving when he got the kicks, but he was driving into help. So it's going to be, can his secondary drives create more offense? If they do, it's a big plus. If they don't, now he's having to make shots to have an impact. We didn't see the same left-hand layups, post-ups, that type of deal, screening or anything like that. So I'm interested to see what they can do to loosen him up, because he's an important part of their offense. Where were you at with it?
I wasn't a fan, honestly. It's similar to you. Like, it's just the way Milwaukee's defense was set up. Like, there weren't really any easy pockets for him to drive into, and then they were feeding him shots off the ball. But again, that's by design. They want him shooting a bunch of threes. So on the ball, like, I go back to your earlier point, like maybe you have a guy screen for the big before setting the pick and roll, just so you can get him downhill. Because if Smart is able to get those downhill touches, like, he is a good passer, and that's how you allow both Brown and Tatum the opportunity to attack some scrambling defenses, attack some of those closeouts from Milwaukee. But if Smart can't get going, then you have to rely on Tatum to kind of run the show. And if he's running the show, that's someone helping off of Smart, which is already restricting space. And if you're able to force the ball out of Tatum's hands, and they're also helping off of non-shooters, then what are the avenues that Jaylen Brown is attacking at that point? So I think Smart's role offensively is going to be very important. They're going to need to find a way to loosen him up. Do we have any lasting thoughts on that game one?
Nope, can't wait to see game 2.